This is example 3 from section 1.5. It's a fairly long example, and I've asked you to read it first before you come here and watch what we can do with Desmos. So I'm going to be skipping over a couple of little algebra steps they do and still try to answer the same questions, but using Desmos. You can see in the first line here, I've just written down exactly what they had. C1 equals 0.5 times D, C2 equals 30 plus 0.2 times D, and C3 equals 50 plus 0.1 D. It does say describe each rental agreement. I can see in C1, they're just charging 50 cents per mile. How about we say 50 cents? 50 cents per mile. That's it. C2, they're charging us $30 first for the use of the car, but then they're only charging us 20 cents per mile. It's charging us a $30 fee first, then charges us only 20 cents per mile. And the last one, you can see that they're charging us $50 first, but then they're only charging 10 cents per mile. So it's charging us a $50 fee first, then charges us only 10 cents per mile. Now the next thing they ask us to do is graph. So I'm just going to turn on each of the graphs. So there's a red graph, a purple graph, and a green graph. Now the standard screen isn't big enough to actually see the lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to this minus sign and zoom out a couple times. And still I can at least see all three lines and at least see where they intersect. All right, that's about it. Now I do want to show you how to change the windows so that we only include the points we want. I really only want to go about as far left as like -10 and as far right as maybe 220. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to go over to here. I only want to go as far left as -10 and as far right as 220. That's pretty good. Let's close the wrench just a little bit. And there's no reason for me to actually have any values down here. So I'm going to leave the y values where they are. These are the top y values. The bottom y values, though, how about if I just make that just -10? I think we'll get the best possible picture that way. And there we go. So this is the green graph was company 3 that charges us $50 first, but has a smaller per day fee. C2 is the one that charges us, the blue one, charges us $30 at the very beginning, but it only charges us 20 cents per day. And the red one is the one that charges us 50 cents per day, but doesn't actually charge a fee at the beginning. All right, so that's that. Let's see here. Part B, for what driving distance does agency 1 cost the same as agency 2? Well, that's the red one and the blue one. The red one and the blue one. You can see that the blue one is more expensive than the red one until they meet. Now, in the book, they actually find it. It certainly looks like 100. If I click on it, it actually says 100, right? We can see from the graphs and the algebra in the text that agency 1 has the same cost as agency 2 if exactly 100 miles is driven. Now it says, if you drive 50 miles or less, which agency is cheapest? Well, 50 miles or less ends right about here. Right about here. And I can see that if I only drive 50 miles or less, the green one is the most expensive, the blue one is the second most expensive, and the red one is the least expensive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to put a little note here. And say, we can see from the graph, from the 3 graphs, that the red cost is less than the other two costs up until, well, D equals 100 miles. So certainly if only 50 miles are driven. Now, here we go. It says, how do you determine which agency provides the cheapest car rental for any given driven distance? Well, I'm going to say it depends on the distance, right? Up until 100 miles, the red one's the cheapest. Up until 100 miles, the red graph, so agency 1, is the cheapest. I guess I'll add another note here. Now the cheapest for a while, let's see here. The cheapest is the blue one until x equals 200. Between 100 and 200 miles, so the blue graph. So let's make sure that's agency 2. I'm a little scrolled out of here. Yes, agency 2 is the cheapest. And after that, the green one becomes the cheapest. So let's see here. I want to add one more note. Well, let me add one more note. One more note. After 200 miles. Try to put in a note. Try again. After 200 miles, the green graph is the bottom graph. That of agency 3 is the bottom graph. So agency 3 would be the cheapest if more than 200 miles is driven. And that's how I would do it if all we had were the graphs.